Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bill Baker. I'm with Firestorm in Atlanta, and we're pleased to have you joining us for this Crisis Coach webinar series that is sponsored by the Rochester Business Alliance and the Eastern Great Lakes Contingency Associates. This is the 12th in the series. Today we're discussing 2015, Year in Review. We'd like to have you as our friend. Firestorm Solutions on Facebook, Firestorm Soul on Twitter. And there is a hashtag. That hashtag is Crisis Coach. Firestorm transforms crisis into value and empowers you to manage risk and crises. Firestorm expertise is crisis management, critical decision support, crisis communication, crisis public relations, and consequence management. Please keep in mind that our presentation today is not complete without the accompanying oral comments and discussion. The work product presented must be considered in conjunction with advice from your organization's personal counsel. In addition, do not interpret this information as legal advice or legal opinion. This webinar series is underwritten by Rochester Business Alliance. Our good friend Chip Dawson is with us today. Chip, would you like to say some nice things about the Rochester Business Alliance?
I'd be delighted to, Bill, and thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to, as Bill said, the 12th and final session in the 2015 series of the Crisis Coach. The new year will start January 14th with our 28th webinar and a host of new ideas on dealing with a crisis in the workplace. The Rochester Business Alliance is delighted to partner with Firestorm and our friends at the Eastern Great Lakes Association of Contingency Planners to bring you this critical 45-minute discussion by Harry Rulin, Chairman and CEO of Firestorm. Today, Harry will be reviewing 2015 along with a look at the critical decision support process. With all the great tips, suggestions, and data-supported solutions that have come from Firestorm team this year, we should be feeling confident that we can prevent and deal with any crisis. But I'm not feeling that right now. I'm seeing depressing news in my paper every morning. I'm seeing great conflict within the public, and especially among those who would lead the nation in the next 4 years, regarding reasonable and appropriate solutions. Consider these data. We have more guns per capita in the U.S. than any other nation on earth. 88.8 guns per 100 people. Since 2001, 406,496 people have died by gunshot on U.S. soil. 3,380 Americans have died as a result of terrorism, 2,990 of those in the September 11 attacks, and about 20 per year since then. We've had 51 mass shootings where at least 4 people were killed in the U.S. since 1997. The next closest countries had 3. The Rochester area, amazingly enough, leads upstate New York in mass shootings. What we know from our Firestorm webinar series is that we need to use data, plan, examine alternatives, create a disaster management system, train everyone, and have competent leaders. With that, we have a much better chance of survival from internal and many external threats. For me, however, there's one other overriding need. We must treat people with respect. If we create a work environment where we help one another deal with issues, we diffuse rather than trigger a situation. Finally, on a personal note, I'll be leaving the RBA at the end of the month after 23 years with the IMC and successor, the RBA. I expect you will have a new host for this series, but if you find you miss me, I'll still be around, writing for my blog at www.dawsonsafetydigest.com and helping my friends in the Rochester area deal with their varied safety and health issues. And then finally, a very happy holiday to all of you. Now here's Harry.
Well, thanks, Chip, and we will definitely miss you. I think your comments were particularly pertinent. As everybody on the call may know, upstate New York is particularly meaningful to me, even though I now live in Colorado, but I was born and raised in New York, and I went to law school in Syracuse. So just prior to the call, we were having some conversation amongst us about the weather right now in upstate New York. And I know that you are all enjoying some unusually warm weather. You know, those are the kind of things I want you all to think about as part of your contingency planning process. You know, there are the changes in climate can have short and long-term effects on your business for a variety of reasons. So I want you all to think about that as you're going through your vulnerability and threat analysis process for 2016, and just say, hey, if this becomes a trend, if we're in a warming situation, does it mean anything to us? Maybe it doesn't. You know, maybe it's not a big deal. But I know for some of the businesses that we're working with, it really is a big deal, and it affects a lot of things around their plant and a lot of their planning. So, you know, just something to think about. The gun issue, of course, that Chip raised is not one that's ever going to go away. You hear people talking about gun control in the United States. When you've got 88 guns per 100 people, and a lot of those are in my home, you're not going to ever take them away. So what you have to change is you have to change a little bit of culture, but also you have to have a behavioral risk and threat assessment program within your organization that lets you know when people are ramping up. Because the violence threat is typically from the inside. It's either employees within your organization who are disgruntled for one reason or another, and it may not have anything to do with their work. It could be something they're bringing to work from home, or it is a disgruntled spouse or boyfriend, and I specifically use the male gender because it's almost invariably male, but who comes to work to exact some kind of retribution on their spouse. So there are almost always warning signs, and knowing how to spot those behaviors of concern, knowing what to do when you see them, is an important part of that behavioral risk and threat assessment program that every organization needs to have in place. Also, one of the things you need to have in place is a predictive intelligence system of some type where you're monitoring media and social media around your location. Because we've done this for some of you, and for some of the large plants that have distribution centers and things of that nature, we can actually put a geofence around your area and monitor what's being said by your employees, and you'll be shocked. I mean, we find people saying things that are immediate precursors to violence and make that violence preventable. You can get that individual help before they feel the need to act out. So very much, I think a couple of the things that we've learned in 2015, and when we talk about a year in review, I think those are two things that all of you should be thinking about for 2016. How do we improve our behavioral risk and threat assessment process? How do we train our people for how to spot behaviors of concern and report them? And making sure that we have in place a robust predictive intelligence system. And certainly we're happy to help you with both of those things. We're happy to do a review and analysis of what you've got in place now. But Chip, your comments just made me think of those things. So I apologize to everybody for digressing away from the slide deck. But that's really those. If I was going to talk to any organization about what they should be looking at when they come back to work in 2016 as part of their ongoing process, we talk about continuous improvement. Those would be two of the things from a continuous improvement standpoint that I would be looking at. So let's go right back to the beginning. As all of you who've been on our webinars before know, Firestorm follows a predict, plan, perform process. Part of that first part of the process, that predictive work, where do we start? Guaranteed, if you sit down in a room with your people, and I know most of you have done this before, and you say, okay, what's keeping you up at night? What are the things that we need to improve on? What are the exposures that we've got? You can identify every potential crisis that your organization might have. And if you can identify them, you can develop plans and mitigation strategies for them. So when we ask, can you identify your organization's next crisis? The answer is absolutely. you can identify your organization's next crisis. You may not be able to identify when it's going to happen, but you can identify, you can put together the list, and on that list will be the things that can go wrong. I can't emphasize to you enough how important it is just to know what those exposures are so that that doesn't hit you out of the dark. So again, go right back to the beginning in 2016 when you're starting this process and do your predictive work. One of the things, every time we help somebody with a major crisis, they think, I can't believe it happened. We never thought anything would happen to us. It's so uncommon that these things occur. And what people don't realize is it is not the slightest bit uncommon. Crises happen every single day. And keep in mind, what's a crisis to you is not necessarily perceived as a crisis to anyone else. So I think one of the reasons everyone has this perception that crises are rare is because when you hear about a fire down the street, it's a fire down the street. It's not a crisis to you. For sure, it was a crisis to the person that it happened to. So, these statistics that you see on your screen, where 64% of businesses had to call 911 during a year. Think about that. I mean, if you've got to call 911, something fairly serious is going on within your organization. Now, 52% of organizations that had to call 911 twice, and these are businesses that, think about businesses that had to call twice in a week. There were some that were calling actually over 100 times a year, but the reason for the calls, 52% of them were medical. So one of the things we have to look at carefully as part of our predictive process is, what is the makeup of our workforce? Are they young? Are they aging? A lot of the businesses that we work with have a middle-age and older workforce. They've been in business a long time. Luckily, they've got great retention of their people. But as that population ages, that creates an exposure for you, and you need to be aware of it and have appropriate plans in place for it. 24% of the calls were for crime or violence. Now think about that. That's a huge percentage of organizations that had to call 911 because something violent or criminally related was going on within their organization. So, all of these things are absolutely predictable. I will tell you this, do not think in any way that crime or violence is a urban or city-related phenomenon. We have responded to so many of these situations that are completely rural. You look at some of the really horrendous things that have happened, such as the shooting at the community college in Oregon. You're talking about fairly rural, bucolic, or at most suburban kind of settings, and it can happen literally anywhere. So I think it's really important to recognize that no business is immune. Certainly we all know that we're not immune from natural disasters, things of that nature. And again, what's going on right now with climate change, and whether you believe that the El Nino that's currently creating that lovely warm weather you're having is climate change, or you think it's just a normal part of a cycle, it doesn't matter. Either way, there are changes, and those changes affect you. So again, process that, because those 70,000 disasters that the Red Cross recognizes annually in the United States, some of them are happening in your community, and the likelihood is that sooner or later something's going to happen to your organization. So again, do that predictive work. That's a big part of your work for 2016. Most companies are not ready. There's no question that when we talk to organizations, a lot of them have plans in place. They have done some piece of the process. So the same Dawson survey that I was talking about before with the 9/11 calls found that 85% of companies did have a plan. Now, that's interesting because, of course, that has not been Firestorm's experience. And it says that 90% of those with a plan updated them at least annually. I think those are great numbers. I hope that, in fact, of the people who are on this call today, that those numbers hold true, because we have typically found that most companies have minimal planning in place. They have enough to say they have a plan, but rarely have they been updated. And the biggest problem that we find with those plans, and this is another thing that I would urge all of you to do, put this on your 2016 calendar, is to look whether your plans tell you how to do the actions, not just what to do in any type of an emergency or crisis. And let me just give you, I don't know if I've told you this story before, but one of our clients had a situation, of a potentially violent situation with an individual with a gun, and the woman who was told to dial 911, in fact, did. She picked up the phone. She was very flustered. She dialed 911, and she waited, and she waited, and she waited for about 30 seconds until she realized that in her office, she needed to dial 9 first to get an outside line, and then dial 911. Now, there are various solutions to that problem. Most phone systems now, you can program them where 911 goes directly out. So I would really encourage all of you to look at that within your organization. What was done in this particular situation, because they could not do that, is now on the bottom of every phone in that facility, there's a orange sticker that says, in emergency, dial 9911. So it's, again, telling your people, and that's obviously a very simple example, but telling them how to do the action. So if part of your emergency response plan involves shutting down a particular piece of machinery or doing something which requires the individual to think, do not rely on then the people to think. In an emergency, different people respond different ways, and probably more importantly, the individual who you think might be doing that function may not be there on that particular day. Also, I very much encourage all of you to not think of crises as happening when you want them to. Invariably, they happen at exactly the wrong time. They happen when your employees are first getting to work, or when they're leaving work, or when you're on vacation. They happen when you don't have the resources available to handle them in the way that you think they should be handled. And if you haven't trained for that, planned for that, if you haven't told whomever is there exactly how to do what needs to be done, you can count on the fact that things are not going to go as well as you had hoped they would. So again, that's something that I would really factor into your process for 2016. We've talked already a little bit about violence and the fact that it's ever present. I'm not going to go into this anymore, but it is everywhere. It is not just what you see on the news. So I don't know how many of you realize, but violence is the leading cause of death for women in the workplace. So a lot of our organizations that we work with have a predominantly female workforce, or at least a large percentage of their workforce that is female. That is a huge issue that must be factored into your planning process. Most of the workplace deaths that occur for women occur as a result of what I said earlier. A husband or a boyfriend, a significant other, coming to work to exact retribution for something that occurred outside of the workforce or of the workplace. The one thing I would say in that situation is you have exposure to all of your employees as a result of that. If I am willing to commit a capital crime in order to get at my spouse, I am willing to do things to anyone who is standing in the way. And unfortunately, that's what we see in these situations. A lot of those very significant situations that you see on the news where there are multiple homicides, there is only one intended target, and there's a lot of collateral damage. So having a process in place, again, you go back to that predictive intelligence process. A lot of times people are telegraphing that type of information via text message, via social media where they talk about the fight that they had with their spouse, where they talk about the thing that they're going to do. Oh, I'm going to get her. Or you hear someone else in your organization talking, oh man, Mary came to work today with a black eye. She got in a fight with her husband. That's the kind of information you need to know. And in those situations, you have to have the appropriate response programs in place where you know, what does this individual look like? What does he drive? I mean, all of that kind of information, because otherwise you just will not be prepared to address the situation as it develops. So again, part of your overall planning process, and doing it now in peacetime is easy. Trying to address the situation at the moment is extraordinarily difficult. So, you know, I've spoken with several of you about the idea of having armed guards or armed security on site. If anyone wants to talk about that type of thing, I'm always happy to do that. While I am a gun owner and gun advocate, I'm a hunter, I do not advocate guns in the workplace without a very, very sophisticated plan. You know, one of the things that they teach police officers when they're at the academy, they ask them the question, how many times do you think when you respond to a scene, will there be a firearm present? And people guess, you know, 10%, 20%, 50%. Well, the answer is 100%, because you, the officer, always have one. And the problem is, if you have one, I don't need to bring my own. I just need to think how to get yours from you. So that's one of the huge problems with having guns or guards in the workplace. I don't any longer have to think about how I get my gun into the facility. I just need to think about how I get it from you. So again, if you're thinking about that kind of thing, or if you do already have a program in place that includes guns, definitely talk to us. The program surrounding that, the training, the education, all that has to be fairly significant. And as importantly, we dealt with an organization recently where they had not notified the local police force that they had individuals carrying on premises. And I don't know whether you all realize this, but since the Columbine shootings in Colorado many years ago, they have changed the protocol for most police departments. Most police departments no longer wait for backup. The first officer on site goes in, and the protocol is anyone with a gun is shot. There are no questions. There's no, you know, stop, freeze, drop it. There's none of that. So if you haven't identified your people, if they don't have some type of vest or whatever else, so that the police know in advance when they arrive on scene there will be 3 people wearing orange vests who, you know, again, a whole program, it is a real, real problem. So in any event, again, that's part of that predictive work, thinking of all of the vulnerabilities and all of the exposures, and then bringing in someone like a Firestorm to just spend a little time to give you that third-party set of eyes. Who's going to look at it? You know, get Chip to come in and talk to you. Let him look at some of the things you're doing so that you, again, a lot of you're so close to it, you may not see things. So reach out and utilize the people that are available to you. You know, civil unrest has been going on in the United States forever. The United States was founded on civil unrest. You know, we threw the tea into the harbor because we didn't want to be taxed. You're going to see this. You see it on the news all the time. But again, if you think that it's just happening somewhere else, that is not the case. It is happening everywhere, and the potential for it to be happening next door to you or on top of you is very real. So I think the racism issue we saw was huge this year. It's front and center. It's going to continue to be front and center. There have been many people who have lost their jobs as a result of it. Unfortunately, there are many people who have lost their lives as a result of it. And it is an issue that will be front and center for the foreseeable future. Factor it into your planning process. when you're doing your predictive work, look at the ethnic makeup of your workforce. Understand what tensions may be there and may be brewing underneath, because that has an important impact on how you plan. I think it's also, again, important to think about the fact that you've got to have those two things we talked about, a behavioral risk and threat assessment process, because that will help you spot these problems before they become problems. And again, that predictive intelligence piece. These people, as you will see a little further on in this presentation, they absolutely broadcast their intent. And we had one gentleman who, while on shift, put out over 70 social media posts about what he was going to do to his coworkers. So again, you've got to be monitoring that, because I think from a legal perspective, as that information is now available and knowable, soon you're going to see a case where someone brings action against their employer for not having protected them in the workplace from a known threat. And that's a real issue now. You know, one of the things that we talk about regularly is that employees and their actions can destroy your brand. We've seen that in so many cases over 2015. We are actually working right now with a company that's a 150-year-old company, and what they've realized is that what they took 150 years to build can be destroyed in 140 characters. People use media, social media, text messaging. Everybody's a publisher now. You know, as long as you've got a cell phone in your pocket where you can shoot video, where you can use your voice recorder, they can do damage in a way that goes viral, where the world knows about what happened. Again, back to that issue of whether your company is, urban, suburban, or rural. It used to be that if you were a rural company and something was published in your local newspaper, that's as far as it went. In today's world, the rural newspaper has as much likelihood of reaching around the globe as the New York Times does. So it's really important to understand that your employees can hurt you and in ways you never really envisioned. So again, it's important to know what they're saying and be prepared to respond to that in an appropriate fashion. And it's very important that I say in an appropriate fashion. One of the things we stress as part of your crisis communications process is that everybody understand they are not a spokesperson for the organization. We never want an employee to respond to something they see in social media. If the company chooses to make a response, that it will be a very calculated response. So again, just letting people know that they are not authorized to speak on behalf of the company is a very important piece of your overall planning process. I don't know how many of you participated just this week, and there'll be another one next week, in a cyber exercise that Firestorm conducted online. We had over 250 companies on the call, and it was very illuminating, I think, for a lot of them. The cyber exposure impacts everyone. The FBI has said that there are two types of companies in America. There are those that have been hacked and those that don't know they've been hacked. Because if you think about it, the White House, the CIA, the FBI, the U.S. Army, they've all been hacked. And they employ the most sophisticated monitoring and control systems you can imagine. So if they've been hacked, you can be sure that if someone wants to get into your systems, they will, and they probably already have. And one of the things that's unfortunate is most companies don't have in place a cyber response plan. A cyber response plan would help their people be trained and understand how to recognize the signs that there's been an intrusion and what to do about it. And that delay on average is 264 days. So imagine somebody's been messing around with your data and in your systems for 2/3 of a year before you realize it. The damage is typically fairly significant, and unfortunately, the damage to brand and reputation goes on and on and on. I still, Home Depot and Target have been dealing with the brand implications of their cyber intrusions now for, both in excess of a year. And the costs are astronomical. I saw the mailing fee, just the cost of the postage for Home Depot's first mailing was $22 million. So again, this cyber risk is real. It's never leaving us, by the way. I mean, as you see, every day, more and more things are becoming computerized. Technology is infiltrating everything. One of the plants that we worked with, the intrusion to their system came through a Wi-Fi enabled thermostat. Now think about that. They had a new thermostat installed, which was really cool, that they could communicate with from Wi-Fi so that they could check the temperature and change the temperature, without anyone ever having to walk up to that thermostat. But that thermostat did not have the protection in place to prevent someone from using it as an entry method into their system. Again, now's the time. This predictive work that we can do, we can ask all of our people, what have we changed in 2015? What systems have we added? Did we add any Wi-Fi enabled devices? Another thing that you're going to see with the rapid change in technology, and further on in the presentation, you'll see I've got some slides about what I consider to be the biggest exposure that we have in the world today, which is what I call rate of change. The rate at which technology is changing our world makes it such that just doing vulnerability analysis once a year may not be enough. It almost needs to be continuous, because the technology, as things change, as a device that you've been using for years becomes more technologically advanced, like a thermostat, or like a car that's going to drive itself. You've probably seen on television that all of the car makers are scrambling now to produce the driverless car. Well, that is going to have significant impact on everyone and everything that we do. So, and if you think that that's a long way off, do not kid yourself. That technology is here now. It exists today. And the time will come in the not so distant future where you will be in a car that has no pilot, that has no driver. And speaking of pilots, I am a registered pilot, though I don't fly anymore. But years ago, 25 years ago, when I got my pilot's license, we talked about the fact that someday there would be pilotless planes. Well, that technology already exists, and it is literally here now. The day will come, and because of the situation you saw with that German Wings plane this past year, where the co-pilot intentionally flew it into the ground, and some of the other human mistakes that you've seen made, there will be the ability for the ground to control the plane very soon, and there will be pilotless planes within your lifetime. It is only public perception that will slow that process, because again, that technology is already here. So, when you think about that kind of technology and apply it to your organization, when we think about forklifts with no drivers, when we think about vehicles on our property making deliveries and things of that with no drivers, it has all kinds of implications. It has implications to our union negotiations. It has implications to our safety processes. I mean, it's a real significant issue for all of you. And when you're looking not at next year's plan, but those of you who are doing 3- and 5-year planning, you really need to factor that rate of change into what you're doing. One of the things we learned in 2015 is that insurance remains a part of the solution. As most of you probably know, Jim Satterfield, myself, Suzanne Laughlin, we all come from the insurance world. And one of the reasons we started Firestorm was because we didn't like the way that insurance tries to respond retroactively to a crisis. So it basically, insurance is what they call a contract of indemnity. It tries to put you back in the position you were prior to the occurrence, strictly through monetary means. And of course, that makes no sense. You can't fix the brand and reputation damage and all of those things. But the insurers have actually been pretty good at developing policies and developing services that go beyond just making a payment. So in the cyber area, for example, everyone on this call, everyone must have cyber insurance. It provides services up front, but it also provides an incredible amount of service when a breach has occurred. And there's services that you can't, well, you can get for yourself, but you would first have to go out and determine who are those people. You'd have to vet them. You'd have to do all kinds of things where you don't have the time. So having in place that cyber response coverage is extremely important. And I will tell you, those of you who do have it, you probably don't have enough limits. So if that's something you'd like us to take a look at for you, we would be happy to do that. It's easy, it's quick, but it's such an important thing, and it's increasing in importance every day. You're also going to see that there are new coverages that are starting to be offered. Instead of where we used to buy a general liability policy that attempted to cover all risks and never really did, there are now very specific policies being offered. You know, so for example, a policy that just came out, there's a carrier that's writing a deadly weapons policy, and it's specifically addressing that issue. As part of the policy being written, you actually get an analysis done of your process and procedure for deadly weapons. So, you know, look into those kind of things. Definitely factor insurance in as part of your planning process. If that's something we can help you with or you need to talk about, don't hesitate to give us a buzz, because, you know, that's something we're very happy to chat about. So factor insurance in as part of your solution. Earlier on, you know, I talked to you about crises being predictable and the importance of having a predictive intelligence network. These are real, what you see on your screen right now are real postings. We have a predictive intelligence department at Firestorm that monitors for our clients certain key words, key phrases, and now key emojis. You know, several of you have probably heard me in talks before talk about the fact that I'm very uncomfortable with the way that we communicate with one another globally, everybody. You know, when I'm 52 years old, and it used to be when I was younger, everyone spoke to each other verbally. You got to hear the inflection. You got to understand the meaning of what someone said. And then, oh, I don't know, 25 years or so ago, people started communicating via email, which was horrible, because the written word is a terrible way to communicate. People don't understand when you're joking. They don't understand the inflection. But it was, you know, you could put a reasonable amount of information out there. Then we went to text messaging. So now we're down to the smallest number of characters possible to get your message across. And, you know, so the communication was significantly reduced. You know, I love it when my kids say, I've got an 18-year-old and a 21-year-old. I love it when they say, oh, yeah, I spoke to so-and-so today. And I say, oh, yeah, well, where'd you see them? How'd you? Oh, Dad, we didn't actually speak. We were texting. Oh, okay. You know, so, but now it's gotten even worse. I tell everybody we've gone full circle. We're back to being cavemen. You know, we used to communicate via pictograph on cave walls. Well, that's what we're doing now. You know, the emoji has taken the place of the words. So that picture you see on your screen of cop and gun, that's one that these sophisticated monitoring tools that we use actually can read those. So you need to make sure you can do that as well with your predictive intelligence system for your organization, because that's what people are using now. That's how they are communicating. You need to know if somebody has the word boss and gun, or wife and gun, or, and, all of these things have to become part of the process that you're employing every day to keep your people safe. So again, that predictive intelligence network, most of you I know have something in place already. You're doing some type of monitoring. You've got some type of controls. If you'd like to talk to our VP who's in charge of that area, Karen Masulo, I very much encourage you to do that. Have her look at what you're doing. If it's something we can help you improve and you'd like that help, obviously, that's what we're here for. That's what we would like to do. So, but again, don't hesitate to reach out. That costs you nothing. So I very much encourage all of you to do that. And now we're to my favorite topic, rate of change. I waited for so long for Dick Tracy's wristwatch to become a reality. Well, now it is. And I will tell you, people ask all the time, how can we predict all of these things that you're talking about with the rate of change being so dramatic? My answer is go to the movies. If you look at the disasters which have befallen America over the past several years, you will find that in the decade prior, there was a movie about it. Hollywood is so good at preying on the fears of people that their predictive work is particularly impressive. Whether it be communicable illness events, mass pandemic outbreaks, or whether it's racially motivated shootings, or, all of these things have been out there for years in the fiction world. And therefore, again, if you open your mind and just sort of let it peruse on what could happen, you'll be surprised that these things are predictable and they are therefore either mitigatable or preventable. Now, one of the things I would also remind you about is the situation we had with the web-enabled thermostat. Think about the fact that now you've got a web-enabled watch, you've got a web-enabled phone. They're talking about web-enabled clothing. Your car, my wife actually just picked up a new car yesterday, and the guy said, oh yeah, I installed the SIM card for you before, just now, so that you now have Wi-Fi in the car. 6 months free. And I thought, oh my God, now I've got to worry about my wife's car is Wi-Fi enabled. If someone wants to hack it for any number of reasons, to listen in on what's going on in the car, as you've seen on the news, to actually take control of the car, which is a scary thing, because of course most of the systems now are electronic. So, your brakes, your gas, all that, you're not actually pushing a pedal that pulls a cable. You're pushing a pedal that activates a servo, that activates a motor that's controlled by a computer. So all of that, again, let your mind and your people just take the time to sit in a room and just talk about these things. Let the whole process of trying to predict vulnerabilities and exposures flow, because it can't happen guaranteed in a crisis situation. Your brain, excuse me, just isn't willing to think that way. It's not going to work that way. It works very linear. And this process needs to not be linear. So again, I encourage all of you to think about that rate of change. So with that said, we have, boy, almost exactly to the minute, reached the end of our 45 minutes together today. Your plans are going to be tested in 2016, whether you're the one testing them or because, that's just the way life is. There's going to be situations that occur. So I can't encourage you enough to follow that predict, plan, perform methodology. And start right at the beginning. You're all so good at your day jobs, you see a problem and you want to jump right to perform. If there's anything I can really stress to you, it's go back to the beginning. Go back to predict and start working from there, because you will be amazed how when you look at a problem that you thought you knew the immediate answer to, the answer becomes less obvious as you do that predictive work. So thank you all for joining me here today. Happy holidays. Bill, I think that unless we have any questions that were submitted, I think we're done for now.
We're okay, Harry, and I want to give a final thank you to Chip for his participation with us for the past several years, and we will greatly miss you, Chip.
Well, yeah, and I echo that sentiment, and up on the screen I just put up now, I wanted to remind everybody that if you want to get involved in that cyber action exercise, we have another one coming up on December 14th, so don't hesitate to go to the Firestorm website, and you will be able to sign up on the website. So please join us on that. It's a very important topic. The Rochester Business Alliance and the Association of Contingency Planners have been great partners with us in trying to promote preparedness, and so we welcome all of you to join us on that webinar on Monday. I think that's Monday, right, Bill? The 12th? No, the 12th is, no, hold on, back up.
It is Monday.
The 14th.
14th.
It is Monday. That's correct. The 14th is Monday. So please join us. Thank you very much.